I think, up until the last few days, most Democrats were saying, wow, Trump is, totally bungling the response to this. The White House is way behind on this, especially in the past couple of days. Trump hasn't really seemed to abide by a lot of the recommendations that some of his own health advisors and, the CDC have been putting out. But when you look at some of the polls that are coming out, and his approval rating is steadily rising. And, just the fact, and it is kind of like brings back a lot of memories of 2016, right? Where it's like, just the fact that Trump is on TV and is dominating the conversation, it doesn't even really matter what he says to a certain degree, right? It seems to, help him marginally in the polls. So Biden needs to be out there, I think, from a lot of Democrats' perspective, just to kind of provide that counterbalance. And now that he has, this TV studio set up, as we were mentioning, there really isn't a reason that he can't be on CNN or MSNBC every single day, for a couple of minutes at a time, pushing back against Trump, providing viewers with an alternative of, in an alternative universe, here's what, a President Biden might be doing here. And is that, something that would be preferable to me? I also think, there is, kind of a balancing act here that the Biden campaign will need to strike as well, because as you remember, kind of in the heat of the primary, Biden certainly was not kind of on the campaign trail as much as some of his rivals. And I think that was, a purposeful effort from the campaign, because they know Joe Biden has this tendency to sort of speak off the cuff and, get into, some hot water verbally, with gaffes or what have you. So, and you've already seen Republicans try and jump on some misstatements that he's had in interviews this week. So I think, it's going to take some time to sort of find that balance of, how much Joe Biden is enough Joe Biden, how much exposure is enough for him just to sort of stay in the public's, conscious of like, oh yeah, he is out there, he's still running for president, so that he doesn't totally fall by the wayside while, there's no elections, coming up, there's no debates. It's obviously up to him to sort of, force himself into this conversation. But I certainly, think we'll start to see more of that. But I think, as Dave mentioned as well, they also have to think of some other creative ways beyond just TV interviews and Zoom, happy hours and press conferences that, aren't necessarily getting a lot of eyeballs, and think of other ways to reach out to people where they are.
And, Trump was up in the Monmouth National poll this week, up 2 points. I think you're seeing the urgency from sort of the outside Democratic group saying, priorities is on the air. Unite the country. The Biden super PAC is on the air, hammering Trump. And they're basically playing what? Him downplaying the early months of this, saying it was going to, disappear, wash away. We've got it locked down, under control. I think they're just those ads to me tell me that they feel like there's a communication gap that needs to be filled on the Democratic side. Like, hey, we got to remind people that Trump missed this in January when the government, this is why we have a federal government, to protect us from threats that we may not have in our focal point. So to me, those ad campaigns really speak to a lot. And, Biden's got to do a lot of things at once, right? Like, he's got to scale up a general election staff, which is very hard when you can't even deploy people out to battleground states yet because everyone's working from home. You've got to raise money, as you said. But I think the communication key is point. And I'll go back to a conversation I had with an operative who actually told me he thought Biden looked visibly uncomfortable at this podium, speaking into whatever, a YouTube laptop camera, whatever they have set up there, and that he should take a page from Trump and just call into shows. I mean, remember how Trump did it in 2015? Right. He would just call into Morning Joe and they'd put him on with a graphic, Donald J. Trump with a big phone, and he would speak naturally and it'd be a back and forth. And this operative said to me, Biden is more like Trump than many Democrats would care to admit, and would be more comfortable and that sort of give and take on a phone. And it's like, nobody needs to see Biden. He looks a little awkward and uncomfortable. Put him on the phone where he may be more comfortable, and will then have a message that resonates more so than, this weird live stream in a box. So I think Democrats are trying to think creatively and help the vice president. Whether he takes this, advice is another question. We've also got a new campaign manager that I think we should factor in. Jen O'Malley Dillon is new to the Biden operation, so we're going to see her vision and a test for her very quickly, because she's only been in this position a couple weeks, so I'm sure she's trying to figure out these questions right now. Imagine walking you in a presidential campaign in the middle of a coronavirus where you can't deploy your candidate anywhere. This is could be a tough challenge for her.